To begin using our new population data, which has been added to our data model through our one-to-many relationship from the states table to the population table, we're going to introduce calculated columns in Power BI. Calculated columns are created in your data model through writing DAX formulas, which makes them seem like measures at first, but there are some crucial differences that we're going to discuss. First, let's create the calculated column on our states table. We will transition to the data view, and then go to the states table, and then we'll click the button on the ribbon for the new column, which can be found in multiple places on our ribbon, or we could just right-click on the table and select New Column. This will open the DAX formula bar just below the ribbon, and we're going to type in a relatively simple formula. We'll title it 2015 population equals, and then I'm going to use Shift-Enter to go down a line. We're going to start with the calculate function, and then an open parenthesis, and Shift-Enter to go down again, and then sum. And then we're going to find our states population column, which can be seen in this menu here, and I'm going to hit Tab to auto-populate that. Then we will use a close parenthesis, then a column, Shift-Enter to go down another line, and then I'm going to start typing and find our year column, use Tab to populate that, and then hit equals 2015. And then I'm going to hit Shift-Enter one more time to go down a line, and close parenthesis to end our formula. Before we commit this formula, let's examine what it's doing. First, we invoke a new DAX function known as calculate. Calculate is one of the most important and most commonly used functions in the entire DAX language because it can apply filters to DAX calculations. All DAX functions consist of at least one parameter. Another word for a parameter that you will sometimes hear is an argument, and I might use them interchangeably. Just know that they are synonymous. DAX parameters or arguments can be required or optional depending on the DAX function that we're talking about. And each parameter is separated from the others around it by using commas within the formula. So, using our calculate function as an example, it consists of two parameters. The first one, the expression parameter, is required. This is the DAX expression or calculation that we are calculating. Then there's a comma, and we move to the second parameter. The second parameter is optional, and it's called the filter parameter. We use the filter parameter in the calculate function to tell Power BI how we want to filter the data to recalculate our expression. In this particular formula, our expression parameter is the sum function on line 3 of our formula. This is summing the values from our state population column. When we wrap that sum function inside of the calculate function, we can then go to our next parameter, the filter parameter, which is where we can enter an expression to filter the data in some way. The filter expression is looking for some logic that can return either a true or false value. Remember that true and false values are also known as logical or Boolean values. In other words, this simple line here is interrogating each row in our population table to determine if the year is equal to 2015. If the year is equal to 2015, this expression will return a true value. If it is any value other than 2015, it will return false. So at the most fundamental level, all the calculate function does is recalculate something where these conditions are true. The result is that this formula is going to reach down from our states table to the states population table, using that single direction filter that we discussed in our last video to move along that relationship line. Then it's going to filter the data in the population table to only those rows where the year is 2015, and then it will sum the population column in that table, and that will be our result. Next, let's commit the formula and see what happens. A new column is added to our states table called 2015 population, and for each state in our table, it contains the 2015 population value that we calculated from our population table. Let's add our new calculated column to the table visual on our report canvas. I'm going to start by resizing some of these visuals to make a little bit more room on the report canvas. And then I'm going to resize the table. And now let's add 2015 population. Then let's click on the column header to sort our population in descending order so we can show our most populous U.S. states at the top of the table and our least populous U.S. states at the bottom. Next, let's format our column. A few videos ago, we discussed the Measure Tools tab on our ribbon, and if we select our 2015 population column from the Data panel, we can see that we also now have a Column Tools tab on the ribbon. On this tab, we will see a section for formatting, which tells us that the population column is formatted as a whole number. Now, if we want to add commas to our number so that we can separate thousands and millions in our report, we just need to click this little comma button in the formatting section, and Power BI has now reformatted this column with commas. And an important thing to know here is that this change will be implemented everywhere that you use this column. If you change how it is formatted on the Column Tools tab, you will see that change take place in every visual on every page of the report where that column is visible. The last thing we can do is change how the column is aggregated on our table. So if we select the table visual and then open the OnObject editor for our table and select the 2015 population column, a small menu appears to the side where we can either change the field itself or we can just change how it's being aggregated. Let's change the aggregation to a sum to see the change that this creates in our table. And this may require us to resort our table columns, so be prepared for that. You'll notice now that the amounts for each row in our table are the same, but now our state populations are being summed, and the total for the entire population of all states is now visible in our totals row at the bottom of the table. And if we change that aggregation from a sum to a median, the total row now tells us the median population across all U.S. states. So, with this video, we've demonstrated one of the many uses of DAX in Power BI to add calculated columns to our data set. Not only that, but how to add a calculated column that calculates data on one table from a totally different table. And this is usually the point where astute beginners begin to ask the question, what exactly is the difference in DAX between calculated columns and measures? For the answer to that, I will see you in our next video where we will explore those distinctions in depth.